Hello everyone, Korvoth here for the super special bonus video. And today we'll be going over my personal notes for the Hark class of spaceships from Fleet, all of the lore involved with them before we get to the real technical details. So pay attention, this is important. These ships are extremely well known and widely used in and around the Daramore Empire, and for a very good reason. Empiricor Thazon Baragut was the man behind their original inception and production, and only a year before the first Fleet story takes place did he cease all current Daramore manufacturing of the vessels in favor of the more advanced, if more finicky and repair-prone, Kozor fighter interceptors. Now, how the Hark pilots of the Milligrams contested zone, which are typically in conflict right now with the beginning of Fleet, with the Daramore Empire came to fly pretty much exclusively Hark-class ships, which Daramore, Thazon himself, produced at great lengths. That's very interesting. And it all really goes back to the Daramore reunification wars, specifically the last reunification war that began approximately 20 years prior to the current Fleet events as of Part 1 of Fleet. Thazon himself did not begin life as a royal, or even with the hope of becoming a member of the ruling class, or even really being aware of them. He was born to one Liata Varagut, after his father, Rakhthar Nihilus, stationed at Epsilon for war leave, but forgotten until 6 years later. Rathkar then seized the throne and dissolved the first stable interim council of Daramore. Rakhthar then went on a purge of all his various bastards, of which there were at least 12 that he tracked down, and either killed or recruited them into his retinue, the last being Thazon's younger half-brother Malrag. And Malrag was given the task with 2 of his elder brothers, whose names have been lost to the ravages of time and space, to recruit the last known bastard, being Thazon. Now, his mother, Liata, having intercepted a communication hinting at her son's demise, fled with her child, much of her extended family, and a lot of the people who interacted with them on a regular basis, amassing a pretty good-sized fleet. They were unfortunately intercepted and cornered near the barren world of Valar, a former Vu trading station. Their fleet was crippled, and all of the survivors were marooned and left for dead on Valar. Thazon, already showing a great aptitude for engineering skills, and his mother crippled and grievously injured, went off into the old Vu ruins. He designed several machines that would later form the basis of the Nectar Core patents to produce meager amounts of food for those that had survived the battle. He did eventually bury his mother. After a long and terrible struggle against her injuries, she died about a year later. And the next 5 years he spent in the Vu ruins experimenting with various ancient Vu components, and the Hark-class ship was what came out of those experimentations. At this time, old Vu ruins were generally thought of as too dangerous to explore without safety equipment, but Thazon and the other survivors, feeling exactly how desperate they were on barren and desolate Valar, did what was necessary after Thazon's initial successes. Many of their remaining number were killed. Again, it is unknown how many even made it to the surface of the planet, but only Thazon and 7 other jackal men and women emerged when he was about 12 or 13. And each of them flew the first 8 Hark ships in existence. These vessels were a fair bit more primitive than the current Hark models, or even the heavily customized versions the Milligram region pilots fly at the start of Fleet. Each ship consisted of a flat cube body, two main engines attached to each rear corner, and a cockpit jutting from the front middle of the craft. The standard, if primitive, mild, true-core dual power exchangers, and the first spear laser variants to either side of the cockpit. Now that won't sound like much, especially when we get to describing more advanced. But the true factor that helped these ships gain an edge on the already widely used and ubiquitous slender dart craft with their single-arrow blaster rifles was not their guns, but the adaptability of the Hark frame. You see, Thazon had been the one to design the craft from the ground up. He knew ahead of time, having been relatively useless and helpless in the battle above Villar, exactly what he never wanted to be again. Just those things, useless and helpless. So Harks were built with modding in mind. 2 such crafts had already been built in their small fleet. 2 of the 7 pilots refused to mount vehicles of war ever again, one of them being quite old and ancient, and the other being a woman who was pregnant with her deceased husband's child. So these pilots flew transport-modded Harks, faster and more heavily armored than their fighter compatriots. Each of these ships carried massive piles of Vu artifacts that Thazon planned to construct into ships, machines, and/or sell to raise funds for his own retinue of soldiers to help defend against new attacks from Rathkar and his vast army. And now you know the first inkling of how Harks came about. Let's skip to the Milligram region. See, Thazon, as he marshaled forces and built Nectar Corps from nothing, also encountered various free citizens within the sector, but all of them paid an incredibly harsh and grueling tax to Rathkar and the Daramor Imperium, as it was known at the time, much higher than previous generations. So Thazon started up his own shipyard at a great personal cost, giving up his first few dozen Hark fighters essentially at less than the cost to build them. But this factory was found and destroyed. But Thazon's identity remained secret. He then moved back to one of Villar's moons and began manufacturing at an insane pace, producing in months what it took Rathkar a decade to manufacture. This period of massive production is the reason behind the universal nature of the Hark fighter. In this period, so flooded with the 2nd and 3rd production models, within the region there was a common saying, "A Hark may not be worth a handful of coins, but at least I'll always have a seat to take me anywhere." And this massive production also served a secondary purpose, a stratagem developed by Thazon. He began using 4th and later 5th round models to run a campaign of harassing assaults on Rathkar-held territories. But the fighters were so commonplace that Rathkar continually punished all pilots, flying them regardless of their modded functionality. This then drove hordes of new recruits to Thazon's side, and gave him the army he needed to begin a real war against his father, to gain vengeance for all those he had lost along the way. Well, that is all for the first Supra special bonus video. I hope you enjoyed all this spicy lore and the oozing piles of sweet, wondrous data found within. Next week, if there is a bonus video after the discussion, I'll go into more of the technical details of how a Hark is built, what is inside of it, and its logical specs for how well it can function and such. Good night and good luck, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay safe out there. Bye-bye, bye-bye, everybody, bye-bye. See you again tomorrow for Foundry. Ooh, it's gonna be good. Goodbye.